Dr. Raza Muhammad has served in the Pakistan Army. He has been the Additional Secretary at the Ministry of Defense Production. He has represented Pakistan as an ambassador to Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles, and Comoros. He has also served as an advisor to the President National Defense University, Islamabad. I would request Dr. Raza to please come on stage and deliver his welcome remarks.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Salam be upon Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, humanity, Pakistan, and you all who sit here. Honorable General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, the former Chairman Joint Chief of Staff, it's a great honor to welcome you here, sir, and I'm very grateful to you that you accepted my request instantaneously a few weeks back, and he said that he'll come over and talk to us on the subject which is flashed here. I also take opportunity to welcome our chairman of the board, Naqvi Saab, ambassadors who are here, the scholars, the people from various departments, IPRI and other think tanks and IPRI. Thank you so much for being here. And as you know that it is a subject which is of great importance to us all and our country. A little about General Hayat, although IPRI will be introducing him in detail. I know General when he was a very, very young officer. We were very young officers, and we were in Tabuk, and we came very close to each other. And I heard him for the first time there. I was reminding him the other day also. I heard him for the first time there. There were certain series of presentations which we young officers had to make on the military history because there wasn't much to do. So our seniors generated work for us. So I heard him for the first time, and it was so amazing to hear him. The way he presented, the way he answered the questions and all that. Then I went to him after the talk. And I don't know whether he remembers it or no. I praised him so much, and I have been following him since then. He's, mashallah, very well read. He has handled the most important issues in the country right from the time when he was quite young, because he was in the, so to say, power alleys and strategic areas, the corridors of power in civil and military. So he knows a lot, and perhaps he keeps most of it to himself and divulges very little to us. But I'm sure on the subject which he is going to talk to us, he is very well versed. He is the most qualified person to talk on this subject with us. Sir, a bit about the IPRI. You know IPRI a lot, but IPRI was raised in 1999, and it was immediately after the atomic experiments that we made in May 98. And Mushahid Hussain gave its concept. Uske baad it's been working, and basically we started off with a focus on the security issues and India and neighbors. But later on we kept expanding our areas of research, and presently we work on traditional, non-traditional security, governance, public policy, and we also have two chairs. One is the chair, International Law Fair was also there, but we recently excluded that law fair, just the international law. And then we have chair, Economic Security. We have Dr. Anil sitting there in the back, and within IPRI we have departments like research and analysis. We have advocacy and communication, and then these two chairs and publication department and all that. We have been working on this subject, sir, and there is a book which we will present to you today. It has been written by Brigadier Rashid Wali and the team, and initially we had written a book on Hindutva. But they have made this effort to write a book on Akhand Bharat, which is considered a threat to the regional peace. We will present you this book, and we will also request you, sir, before we issue it, you please take time out and go through it, and we would look for your advice on its further improvement before we issue it. And with these few words, sir, very grateful once again that you took time out, and I am sure that it will be amazing discourse and very great and new knowledge. But before anything else, I would like to present this book to you, and we are taking actually this opportunity to अपने show off के लिए. Back to IPRI.
Thank you, sir. We would now move on to the address by our Honorable Chief Guest, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, Nishan-e-Imtiaz, Military. General Zubair joined Pakistan Army in 1976 and has had a distinguished military career spanning over 4 decades. He is a graduate of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, USA, Command and Staff College, Camberley, UK, and National Defense University, Islamabad. He has 2 master's degrees in War Studies and Military Science. He is also a recipient of Humanities Gold Medal, Master Gunner Award, and Master Warfighter Award. During his service, the General has commanded an infantry division and a corps. His key staff appointments include Army and Air Advisor, United Kingdom, Chief of Staff of a Strike Corps, Private Secretary to the Chief of Army Staff, Director General Staff Duties at GHQ, and Director General Strategic Plans Division, and also Chief of General Staff, Pakistan Army. In recognition of his meritorious services, he has been awarded with Nishan-e-Imtiaz Military and Hilal-e-Imtiaz Military. He is also a recipient of the Legion of Merit of Turkish Armed Forces, King Abdulaziz Medal of Excellence by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Defense Commendation Medal, Italy. In November 2016, the General took over as the 16th Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee. He is also the 3rd Colonel-in-Chief of Regiment of Artillery. He has been a member of the National Security Committee and also the Deputy Chairman of the National Command Authority. The General continues to be a part of the policy landscape and the think tank community by delivering lectures on geostrategy, nuclear matters, and issues pertaining to defense and security. I would now request the Honorable Guest, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, to please address the audience.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ambassadors, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Let me start by first of all thanking IPRI for giving me this opportunity, for inviting me here, and thank General Raza in particular. And as he mentioned a couple of months ago, I met General Raza and he urged me to give a talk, so here I am. And I decided that I will speak on something which is very relevant to today, but I believe it is going to be more relevant for tomorrow. And therefore I said I will speak on emergence of Bharat and its implications. This is a learned audience, and I feel humbled to speak in front of many of you, for you know more than I do. But what I will humbly try and do is try and contextualize this transition from India to Bharat. This is my core purpose today. Try and contextualize this transition from India to Bharat and then flag its implications in the internal Indian dynamics, the regional dynamics, and international dynamics before I conclude. And if you have any question and answer, and if I can be of any help to answer them. At the outset, I always give 2 flags, and I will give it here also. I make these comments in a private capacity. I hold no official position. And I always speak under Chatham House rules. So what's my canvas for today's talk? This transition from India to Bharat, it is such a monumental development, but I find hardly a debate, I find hardly a whisper. It's all drowned in the short-term geopolitics of the current moment. And therefore, as I said, my aim is to contextualize this development both theoretically and practically, and in doing so, highlight its implications. I thought I'll today reverse my order and give you 3 bottom-ups for my talk. 1, there is no template to study this phenomena on this scale and scope. No template. 2, the foundational construct being framed to hype up India at the expense of overlooking its transition to Bharat is a dangerous proposition, to say the least. And 3, lastly, the implications of this development will be in short term, and I classify that from 2025 to 2030. There will be more focused on internal India. In the midterm, it will expand and be more focused, and its outflow will be on the region. And midterm I classify as 2030 to 2050, and its long-term implications I classify as 2050 and beyond. While preparing for this lecture, I recalled that 5 years ago, as a chairman, I visited United Kingdom, and at the Pakistan High Commission in London, I was talking to journalists from BBC, from Channel 4, from ITV, etc. And the topic was evolving geostrategic environment. That is what I was speaking to them about. And during that discourse at Pakistan High Commission, I spoke about Hindu Rashtra and Bharat. The moment I used the word Bharat, the senior most journalist in the room, he stopped me. He said, "Sir, what did you say?" So I said, "Bharat." And he again raised his hand. He said, "Sir, how do you spell it?" And so therefore I spelled it for him, how Bharat is spelled. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the level of ignorance of this Bharat phenomena just 5 years ago. And just 5 years later, in 2023, you saw Modi sitting behind a name tag in front of him, not India, but Bharat, at the G20 summit, which happened in New Delhi last year. See the phenomenal change in 5 years transition. Now, conceptually speaking, there is nothing new and unusual if it was just a change of name. After all, countries have changed their names in the past also. Burma to Myanmar, Ceylon to Sri Lanka, Czech Republic to Czechia, Turkey to Turkey, Siam to Thailand, Persia to Iran, Swaziland to the Kingdom of Swanti. So what is profoundly different? I will explain that as I go along. But the core argument, what is different this time is that normally when countries change their name, they change not their character. What is important about this change is that not only changes the character, but more importantly, I believe, it has changed the very nature of the state. And that is profound. As I said, I found no analogy or no template to start with. How do I template this evolution or this transition from India to Bharat? I found no template. The closest that I came to was, you see, Hitler had declared the Third Reich in 1939, so in 1933, and had claimed that it would last for 1,000 years. So the closest template would be, because the Germans had a romanticization with these Reichs, the First Reich, the Second Reich, the First Reich being the Roman Empire from 962 to 1806. So, taking yourself back by about thousands of years. This is precisely, if somebody was to today conceptualize the phenomena of this transition, it would be as if somebody in Europe had thought about the First Reich and declared itself to be the Third Reich. Obviously, there was a Second Reich in between. Exactly what is happening is that somebody sitting in South Asia or a group of people are thinking about a history, and I'll speak more about this, and they are trying to live a world of their own. So therefore, Bharat, or as I go along, the Akhand Bharat is 1,000 years plus fantasy. And as I said, it is akin to the romance as Hitler had with Reichs. And there could be no greater exposition of that romance than the new parliament building in which the map of Akhand Bharat was displayed and stands displayed even today. And once that flag was unveiled, one of the Indian ministers, a federal minister, he tweeted, "The intent is clear. The intent is clear." And within hours, he was forced to take down that tweet because the Indian government policy was not to give the real intent. As always, they wanted a different facade. So this Akhand Bharat is bigger than any template, even the Reich, because it wants capture of land from the Amu Darya, which is Oxus in the west, to the Pacific in the east, and from northern Himalayas in the north to as south as you want to come, whether you want to come to Maldives or Seychelles or whatever. Now, my basic argument as I present to you today is this concept of Bharat. What is its basic foundational pillar on which this has now been put onto? And that foundational pillar is Hindutva. So if you want to talk about Bharat, you will have to find the foundational pillar. And that foundational pillar is Hindutva, the ideology, the worldview of Hindutva. Now, interestingly, in itself, it would mean nothing. It would require operationalization. So how does it get operationalized? It gets operationalized through two means. One, there is a political face to this phenomena, which is like the BJP. That's a political face. And then there is the real face, the militant face of this phenomena. That is the RSS or the Sangh Parivar, the 36 different groups, including Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Bajrang Dals like. So this triangle between the ideology, the political face, and the real face. Now, in political terms, on this scale and scope, I found nothing to compare it to, except that in its philosophical terms, I can relate it to Northern Ireland. You had Sinn Féin as the political face of the Irish Republic desires. And then you had IRA, which was the militant face of the same phenomena. But that, if you look at Northern Ireland, I think many of us would not be able to point it even on a map. It was on a very small scale. And look at the destruction that it caused for an empire like Britain, and for how long? Because if you have a front face which acts very benign, or would try and act very rational, like Sinn Féin, like BJP, but you have a real face, like the IRA, like the RSS, like the Bajrang Dal, like the Hindu Vishwa Parishad. So, with this, the nature and character as it changes is because in Hindutva, you have to be a Bhumiputra. And Bhumiputra means a son of the soil. Hindutva is anchored upon Bhumiputra, which is a son of the soil. Now, this is a very racial term in itself. Very racial. Because it is to the exclusion not only of all other races, but also all other religions, like the Christians, like the Muslims, like the Sikhs, like the Dalits, like others. And in this transition, the worldview is, as Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, the current head of the RSS, would say, that Akhand Bharat was the undisputed truth. Now, as far as they are concerned, they have stamped what is the truth. Forget about what you think and I think or anybody else think. For them, this is the undisputed truth. And for them, and he goes on to say, divided Bharat, not divided India. Very interesting. And divided Bharat was a nightmare. So I, sitting in Pakistan, on the territory of Pakistan, I'm a nightmare. And this is coming from Mr. Mohan Bhagwat. And he says, the separate parts of Bharat would unite one day. Now, interestingly, most of us who become classified as English chattering classes, if there was a match going on, for example, a hockey match, in 70s, 80s, there used to be a lot of hockey between India and Pakistan. The English class would say, you will see the television, you hear the commentary, India versus Pakistan. But have you ever noticed what is the street logic? In Urdu, they would always say, Pakistan ba mukabla Bharat. They said it in 60s, they said it in 70s, they said it in 80s, Pakistan ba mukabla Bharat. And we lived with these two realities as if they coexisted. Because they had not as yet surfaced to the extent to which they would manifest themselves beyond 2014. And therefore, if you have to look at this philosophy, Mohan Yadav, the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, speaking on this Ayodhya temple only 3 days ago, and believe me, my talk was not planned in relation to this Ram temple, but I think it got synchronized beautifully. I think there was a divine intervention. I couldn't have asked Allah for a better stage setting for this talk. He said that the construction of a new Ram temple in Ayodhya was a step forward. So this is not the end state. It is just a step forward towards, and he's very clear, he doesn't say towards Bharat. A Deputy Chief Minister says towards Akhand Bharat. And if God wishes, he repeats, Akhand Bharat will be formed again. If not today, than tomorrow. Not only up to Sindh and Punjab. So he, simply brings me in with a stroke of brush. Not only up to Sindh and Punjab, but even Afghanistan. Now, there were some people inside India who had foreseen this lurking danger. For example, Mr. Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, while speaking to the Foreign Services officers in 1959, and by that time Mr. Nehru had been Prime Minister of India for 12 years. He was no novice. He was the longest serving so-called Democrat in the world at that time. So if he says something, it cannot be brushed aside. It's not somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about. So speaking to his foreign services, Indian Foreign Services officers in 1959, he foresaw this very clearly and predicted it, as I said, 55 years ago. He said the danger to India, mark you. This is not General Zubair indicating danger to India. This is Nehru indicating danger to India. He said danger to India, mark you, is not communism. And if you know that in that time of the world, communism was the big enemy. So that was the big word. Anybody with just a suspicion of linkage with communism was condemned. And Nehru goes on to say that the danger to India, mark you, is not communism. It is Hindu right-wing communalism. This threat was also seen by Sardar Patel, and I use Nehru and Sardar Patel because I don't want to tell you that I have a Pakistani color to speaking to what I'm saying. I'm giving quotes from their top leaders. Nehru I gave, now let me give you a quote from Patel. The Patel says that the activities of the RSS constitute a clear threat. So Nehru called it a threat, Patel calls it a threat. To the existence is a threat, it's not a generalized threat, it is a threat to the existence of the government and the state. So he doesn't stop at the government. It's not only a threat to the government. Patel says it's a threat to the state. And therefore, Ambarkar, the former Indian Minister of Law and Justice, says, no matter what Hindu says, and he's a Hindu himself, Hinduism, as in Hindutva, is a menace to liberty, equality, and fraternity. This is their former Indian Law and Justice Minister. So when the West will speak about shared values of liberty, equality, and fraternity, this is their law minister saying, no matter what you say, Hindutva is a menace to liberty, equality, and fraternity. And there is no wonder that the Canadian historian, author, and academician Anthony Parrell says that Hindu culture, as defined by Hindutva, is an unhistorical, narcissistic, and false account of India's past. Very powerful words. Unhistorical. So if you have that Third Reich sort of an idea, it's quite unhistorical. But he also said it is very narcissistic. And it's a false account of India's past. But that's what we are in. That's what the reality today is. You know that current Indian Foreign Minister, Minister of External Affairs, Mr. Jaishankar, has written a book called Bharat Matters. What matters? India doesn't matter. What matters is Bharat Matters. And the book launch took place this year, this month. So it's very current. And he talked about himself, we as a nation, and he talks about Bharat. He says, just as in Ramayana, he's talking about Hindu scripture. And then he talks about Lord Hanuman. So you see, this is not somebody speaking 50 years ago. This is this sitting foreign minister of India. He's drawing inspiration of Bharat from that scripture and from that Lord. And he then makes a point that whatever we are doing, I mean Modi, Yogi, Doval and others, is to enter into a divine service. He uses the word divine service. It's mind-boggling. So this mantra is now taking deep roots, and it has state patronage in taking so. There's another book by Rahul Shivsankar and Siddhartha Talia called Modi and India, 2024 and the Battle for Bharat. So in their mind, they have clearly constructed this as a battle. It's not a political discourse. It's not a social discourse. It's not an evolutionary process. It's a battle. This is exactly how they are conceiving it. And for them, the foundation of this battle is provided by dharma. And this they claim as an alternative idea of India. So Bharat was something else, and they claim, as I said, nature and character of the state changes. They come to Bharat, and therefore they call it as an alternative idea of India. And once you think this is an alternative idea of India, and you look at this symbol of the Hindutva and these people, which looks like more of what Hitler's symbols look like, then I think you have to connect the dots if you have some intelligence. Because this, and as I will speak ahead, this Hindutva RSS legacy was taken over by the RSS. And you know RSS was banned in India. Not once, not twice, but thrice. The state of India banned RSS 3 times. Just imagine the power that this banning was overturned by the state itself, having banned a particular organization with that ideology 3 times. So when you have this romance with an illusionary history and you want to take yourself to a Maurya Empire about 2,293 years ago, the empire of Ashoka and Chandragupta, you are being very revisionist in nature. So if people talk about revisionism, I have a simple question. Who has the largest revisionist ideology in the world at the moment? By far. There's no even second close. And that's India. So this is based on something like 2,300 years old, vague and ambiguous historical construct. As if there was no history before that, and as if there will be no history after that. For them, Bharat is a culture and a civilization. And the identity of it can only come into play if there is a Hindu Rashtra. And therefore you saw that they are claiming this to be a phase of rediscovery. So to that ambiguous concept, they have a phase of rediscovery of Bharat. No wonder that when Ram Mandir was consecrated about 3 days ago, the main buzzword was that the wait of 500 years is over. The wait of 500 years is over. Somebody asked me, how did you feel, Ram Mandir? So I've been in London. I've seen St. Paul's Cathedral. St. Paul's Cathedral was made sometime in 1678, 350 years old. Babri Masjid was made something in 1528, 150 years before St. Paul Cathedral in London. I said, how would people in Britain would feel if somebody was to destroy the St. Paul Cathedral? And suddenly, they are struggling. They don't want to conceptualize and with that notions, because then hard realities will come to them to haunt them. And according to this worldview of the Bharat, secularism is inverted and misplaced. Now, this concept was not an original Hindu concept per se. As I said, this new phenomena of Hindutva which emerged, they were inspired not by Hindu teachings, but historically it is proven that they were inspired by Nazi Germany and Mussolini fascism in Italy. Now, I'll give you a quote. B.S. Monji, a Hindu nationalist leader, he met the Italian dictator Mussolini in 1931. So this is about 8 years after the formation of the RSS. He met Mussolini. And he comes back to India and he says, the idea of fascism vividly brings out concept of unity. So he is now identifying himself with the brilliance of the idea of fascism. As to him, that brings out the concept of unity amongst the people. And then he says, India, and particularly Hindu India, needs some institutions for the military regeneration of Hindus. Some institutions for not regeneration of Hindus, for military regeneration of Hindus. And he concludes by saying that our institutions of RSS under Hedgewar is of that kind. So he stamps RSS. As Mussolini has done, so RSS can also do. Now inspired, this is Mussolini. Mr. Gawalkar, also one of the founding members of the RSS, he was inspired by the Nazis. What he says is frightening. He said the Christians and Muslims must live wholly subordinated to Hindus. This is what Hindutva is made of, and this is amongst that triangle, the real face, the RSS, the BJP. Don't be taken by BJP on that side. And he says Christians and Muslims must live wholly subordinate to Hindus, and he doesn't stop there. And he says, glorify. So those who live there, they must glorify the Hindu race and Hindu culture. This is Mr. Gawalkar. So therefore, I'm not surprised that while framing this equation in his Independence Day speeches in 2 years now running in row in 2022 and 23, Mr. Modi has framed the equation as 1,000 years of slavery. And for him, obviously, the 500 years wait is over. Now, for the future, what is the worldview for the future? For the future, Mr. Hardaryal, in 1925, he was a co-founder of the non-religious Ghaddar movement party. He says the future of Hindu race and Hinduism rests on 4 pillars. You have to understand from where they are coming. If you don't understand, you will never be able to pin yourself up. 4 pillars. First, Sangatan, Hindu Sangatan. You have to affiliate yourself and define yourself, identify yourself as a Hindu. Sangatan. Second pillar, Hindu Raj. There has to be a Hindu Raj, a Hindu Rashtra. The third pillar is Shuddhi. Shuddhi is a forced conversion of Christians and Muslims. And the last pillar, the fourth pillar, is conquest and Shuddhi. And he is very categorical about what is the conquest of Afghanistan and the frontiers. And Mr. Hardaryal then goes on to say that so long as Hindu nation does not accomplish these four things, जब तक हमने ये चार चीजें हासिल न कर ली, the safety of Hindu race will be impossible, as Muslims and Christians are outsiders. I have quoted from top Indian Hindu leaders. I have not quoted from Mr. Jinnah. I have not quoted from Iqbal, because that would have seemed to be giving my angle to that. I want you to listen to what they are saying from their own horse's mouth. And therefore, to me, this is the way the Indian polity was then formed. The great debate of the Indian flag and the chakra that was to be in the Indian flag, whether that would be the Gandhi chakra, the spinning wheel of the loom, or whether that would be an Ashok chakra, the Dharma chakra, representing the chariot wheel of Ashoka. Because the 1921 flag by Indian National Congress carried Gandhi chakra. The 1931 Indian Congress flag carried Gandhi chakra. But 1947, the Gandhi chakra is out and the Ashok chakra, the Dharma chakra, is in. What a fundamental shift. And for this shift, whom they rely to, because you do require a historical, we rely on Iqbal as our philosophy, or people in the West, they would look up to, let's say, Machiavelli, they would look up to Sun Tzu. For their strategic thought, the new show boy, the new pin poster boy in India is green tea de de. Is Chanakya Kautilya. And his philosophy, as written in Arashtra, his book. Now, this is an Indian version, not only of what Machiavelli, because Machiavelli was more political, but also of Sun Tzu, who was more military. So it's a Machiavelli plus Sun Tzu, and you get into Chanakya Kautilya. Now, if you look what they are actually aiming at, or from where they are drawing their inspiration from this philosophy, from this political thought, are his three cardinal principles. Number one is deception. That's the first cardinal principle of Chanakya Kautilya. Deception. And in our part of the world, we have known it for far too long. Bagal mein churi, muh mein ram ram. Deception. Number two is power. That's the cardinal principle, as laid out by Kautilya. Power at all cost and power by all means. That's fair. Power in itself may be good, but power by all cost and power by all means. And third is money. You've got to get that money at all cost and by all means. So this is how I contextualize my opening framework for this talk. Now, with this contextualization, let's get to a little hardcore. The foundation stone of the Bharat itself. As I said, 1922, Savarkar, he founds it, and according to him, Bharat must be looked upon. And this is now a very fundamental thing, because if you have to understand the foundational of this phenomena. He said Hindustan must be looked upon as a fatherland and a holy land. He's not talking about looking at Hindustan as a motherland. I mean, you have to go deep into what they are saying. He said Hindustan must be looked upon as fatherland and as holy land. And we know that whenever people have conceptualized holy land and mixed up with fatherland, this is a recipe for disaster. And then he says that Muslims and Christians, and I'm amazed at Christians' world's silence or ignorance, for this is not against Muslims alone. This is as much about Christians, and I'll go and speak about it a little as I go along. He says Muslims and Christians cannot be incorporated into Hindutva. I mean, he's drawing an iron curtain. If you are a Muslim, if you are a Christian, you cannot be incorporated into Hindutva, because now he says why you and I or some Christian friends cannot be incorporated, because their holy land is far off in Arabia. So in Makkah and Medina, what he's trying to say. And Palestine. So Christians have Bethlehem and others. And then he says, look at the mental state and philosophy. Their names, for example, my name is Zubair, or somebody is Muhammad, or somebody is Abdullah. Their names and outlook smack of foreign origin. Their love is divided. So you see, this is what Mr. Savarkar in 1922 laid the foundation of Hindutva. He lays out his view. We cannot be incorporated. Christians, Muslims, and we smack of foreign origin. And soon, but the interesting thing is, from 1922 to 1980, when BJP was finally formed, RSS took 58 years to penetrate every organ of the Hindu state before they assumed power. This is a phenomenon that needs deep study. How a movement comes into force and for 58 years does not stake claims to power, although believes in Kutiala, whose third is power at all cost and money at all cost, but does not go for power at the start. Takes 58 years to come to power. Now, every single foundational pillar which is being built to glorify India and Bharat at this moment, because to the West, they still have a glory, a romance with Gandhi and Nehru and secularism and democracy and freedom. And I will now explain to you how each of that fundamental principle stands totally demolished. Let's come to democracy. The largest selling point. India is the largest democracy. In the Journal of Democracy, published this month, 2024, I'm not giving you a Journal of Democracy 50 years ago, published this month. The Journal of Democracy says that it is easy to draw parallels between the political and social dynamics of Hindu nationalism in India under Narendra Modi and the policies of racial segregation in the Jim Crow era in the United States. Imagine Journal of Democracy is now drawing an analogy with the Jim Crow era in the United States between 1880 and 1965. And the same journal says, as with marginalization of black Americans based on race during the Jim Crow, the Hindu nationalism aims to marginalize Muslims, Indians based on religion. Journal of Democracy. And he says the methods similar to those used in the Jim Crow South. And he then says 3 methods: exclusionary laws, segregation, and vigilante violence are now being deployed in India to subdue the Muslims. Journal of Democracy, published January 2024. So it's amazing how this illusion has been kept afloat because of what I just read from Journal of Democracy. You know what's the global standing in the global index as far as democracy is concerned in India? 108. On the global index today, it stands at 108. I don't want to compare, but let me compare. Pakistan stands at 106. I'm not giving you my figures. Please work out the figures yourself. So the foundational principle is illusionary. There is democracy. Well, in democracy, I've just given you, it is below even Pakistan, it is 108. Global publications. In 2022, it was 100. So it is slipping down. It is further slipping down. And it is well below what the British Prime Minister calls as the shithole African countries of Tanzania and Nigeria. Why? Because the Journal of Democracy says that there is shrinking space for civil society and independent media. Now, Guardian, obviously the Indian knows what's going on, how they've come to 108th in democracy. In June 23, it posted a story saying that India was secretly working to preserve reputation on Global Democracy Index. So they're not working about democracy inside, they are trying to influence this Global Democracy Index. Now, other foundational pillars: human rights, 152. Women right, 102. 102 in index, women's right. China, which is considered dictatorial by the West, is 85. In secularism, the so-called secularism, the West, darling. You know what's the index? 194 out of 198. It's the 4th worst country for religious violence. Equality, 127 out of 46. Freedom of media, 161 out of 80. Rule of law, 79. Income equality, 123. In minimum wage, it has fallen 73 places in 1 year. That's the reality. I've given you global indexes. But the West, because it is under a geopolitical, short-term, short-sighted compulsion. Because why would? Because you see, only 19 years ago, in 2005, 3 years after Gujarat massacre, Mr. Modi was banned from entering the United States. They denied him diplomatic visa and they revoked his existing visa. And this stemmed from his support for anti-Muslim riots in Gujarat. And that ban continued for 9 years, up to 18th May 2014, and he was to become the Prime Minister on 26th May 2014. Because the writing on the wall, he had won the election, so what would they do? So they revoked it once he won the election. So look at the force with which that BJP, now led more by the front face of this triangle of Hindutva, BJP and RSS. And it is no coincidence that Mr. Modi was the first official ever to be denied entry under the International Religious Freedom Act, which prevents US entry of a foreign government official responsible for violation of religious freedom. On the demolition of democracy. You know, when was the last time a press conference was held in India, which is a core part of democracy? You are held accountable. The last press conference by the Prime Minister in India was held exactly 11 years ago on 3rd January 2014 by Mr. Manmohan Singh, in which he answered 62 unscripted questions and 100 journalists were present. And since then, there has never been a press conference in India. Because people would ask questions of this unfolding of the Hindutva philosophy in earnest. But because they have done their homework, this evolution, you see, as I said, from 22, they first saw a little bit of, they wanted to learn. So under Mukherjee, they had Jana Singh Party in 1951, they had Janta Party in 1977, but finally, under Vajpayee and Advani in 1980, they had the BJP. And in 1984, this philosophy, this Hindutva philosophy, had 2 seats in the Indian Parliament, 2. In last elections, in 2018, they had 303. So from 2 seats in 1984, they have gone to 303 seats. And now the mantra is 370 seats, because Modi has cancelled Article 370, so now they want to bless him with 370. Another foundational stone, freedom. India, according to the World Global Index, stands in partly free country, not free country, partly free country. Pakistan stands in the same league. In the same freedom index, published last year, largest 10 years decline in freedom in any country. On a 10-year scale, India has gone down by 10%. Russia has gone down by 11%. So India stands in the league of Russia as far as partly freedom country is concerned on the International Global Index. Women's rights. I am laying the foundation which has been created to craft the image so as to be able to make it sell to an audience. That's illusionary. I'm giving you hard facts. Women's rights. According to an estimate by a study done in the United States, more than 10 million female fetuses may have been illegally aborted in India since 1990. 10 million. It's a genocide of women. And 500,000, 500,000 girls were being annually lost due to female feticide. Even in 2023, an average of 7,000 women died due to dowry death. There are therefore 63 million fewer women than men in India today. And by 2030, another 6.8 million gap will occur. And still, in modern India today, 26% of the girls in India get married before the age of 18. I'm not talking about Pakistan. Now, also a phenomenon in India is the genocide that is being unleashed. We have seen the genocide in Gaza, but hardly anybody speaks about the genocide that is being unleashed in India, especially Kashmir. According to the Genocide Watch, there are 10 stages of genocide. Out of them, 8 stages have been completed. Classification, symbolization, dehumanization, denomination, organization, polarization, preparation, and persecution. They have been completed. Only 2 stages are left: extermination and denial. India has yet to define genocide by law, and there is no Indian legislative on genocide. And therefore, India eminently qualifies as an offender of genocide. We have seen that play out repeatedly. For example, the 1984 program against the Sikhs, or innumerable Muslim programs, the 2002 Gujarat massacre, a case in point. So this Ram Mandir now, this demolition which took place in 1992, about 31 years ago, it symbolized, having captured the political power in 1980, 12 years down the line, they come up with this Ram Mandir as the central theme for Hindutva. It was to create a new narrative. To create a new narrative. To regenerate, according to them, is civilization, a culture, and a religion. And to them, the Indian Ayodhya temple is a huge monument to Hindu supremacy. And we know who led this attack. It was Mr. Advani. He launched his crusade in defense of Hindutva. That was the name of that crusade. It was called Crusade in Defense of Hindutva in 1990, which resulted in the demolition of Babri Mosque 2.5 years later, on 6th of December 1992. And according to unofficial estimates, 3,000 people were killed in this Advani's campaign in 2.5 years. But according to official Indian estimates, not estimates, data reported, there were 116 communal riots in 14 states in which 564 Muslims were killed. So Ram Mandir has been built on the blood of Muslims. And I'm giving you the data. I have the state-wise data if somebody is interested. So therefore, people like Ashok Seven was right when he says, anyone who believes in Indian constitution must boycott the Ram Mandir inauguration. This temple is the graveyard of Indian secularism. So I told you about democracy, I told you about human rights, women rights, secularism. And therefore, Rana Ayub, she tweeted brilliantly, this day will not just mark the brute majoritism of those in power, but also silence of those who were once the bulwark against communism. Everybody was silent and everybody was present and everybody was gleeful. From Tendulkar to the Bollywood stars. No, nobody had the shame to say and grieve a destruction of a 500-year-old mosque built on the bloods of the Muslims. That's what the brainwashing of Hindutva has done. And that brainwashing is not to the street level. It is, but that I can condone. I can condone because an uneducated man can be drifted this way, that way, through slogans and others. But I was stunned that a Nobel Peace Laureate, Kailash Satyarthi, Indian, who got a Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, he described this as a historic day. A Nobel Peace Prize winner. This is the brainwashing. We talked about Taliban carrying out the brainwashing of young children. Well, there is a so therefore this phenomena is targeting anybody who is against it. If you are on the web, there's a website called Hindutva Watch. I would like you to follow that. It will give you some excellent reads on what's going on. Targeted by BJP. Now, in terms of secularism, you see BJP selected Yogi Adityanath in 2017 as the Chief Minister of UP, as the most populous state and home to Babri Masjid ruins. Yogi Adityanath is an Indian monk and is the founder of the Hindu extremist militant group called Hindu Yuva Yahani, the HYU. And what does this group does? Is famous for public cow protection campaigns, fight against Hindu-Muslim marriages, launch Ghar Wapsi programs, and be a part of mass conversions. Adityanath also has a long association for calls for violence against Muslims. And I'll give you two famous calls. He's called for killing of 100 Muslims for every one Hindu killed. He's on record. And he's also called for digging out the Muslim women from the graves and raping them. Yogi Adityanath, maybe the future Prime Minister of India. So not only that they have yogis, now they also have sadhus. The Rajasthan Assembly already has 4 sadhus. I don't know, 2004 will throw up how many yogis and how many more sadhus. This secularization has gone deep inside this Hindutva ideology into Indian state. There has been a complete secularization of the Indian military, which has eroded the secular character of the Indian army. Their promotion system has been saffronized, their posting system has been saffronized, their command echelons are saffronized. And people, including Muslims and Christians, are forced to raise Jai Shri Ram. This is the danger that Nehru was alluding to. Now, Indian Army, as you know, have embarked upon a program called Agniveer. Now, these Agniveers are people who will be trained in the military for about 4 to 7 years. Now, 3 out of these 4 Agniveers will retire as civilians. I have no doubt that these Agniveers will be ideally used by RSS as lynch mobs and trained terrorists. I think the world should be very wary about. The Indian Army, because of its saffronization, is not taken into the mantra of looking towards Pacific or Indo-Pacific. According to the lessons learned from the Russian conflict, Indian Chief Manoj Pandey, he says that the notion of victory is still land-centric. So those who are actually claiming that India would somehow or the other join them into this great contestation in the Pacific or in the Indian Ocean, this is not what Indian chief is saying. He says the notion of victory, as far as he is concerned, is land-centric. Why? Because the land to be gained for Akhand Bharat is land-centric. That's the link. The Indian judiciary has been saffronized. It looks now more like a BJP legal wing. The Supreme Court has no power in meddling in decision of the Speaker, has no power in meddling in the decision of the Governor and the President, has no power to meddle in the division of SEBI, has no power in deciding on constitutional validity of the LGBTQ. But Supreme Court has the power and special power to pass judgments in favor of Ram Mandir. So in this worldview, they have now created an Indian Reunification Association as the bedrock of this Akhand Bharat. It exists to reunite with India what is now Pakistan and Bangladesh. Although I think from the map that I have seen, there are 9 countries in this world which are under threat of this Akhand Bharat. 9 physical, geographical countries. Pakistan is being one of them. And according to this Hindu Rashtra, even now when a Dalit woman drinks water from a tank, it is cleansed with cow urine. Happened in Karnataka 7 days ago. When Pervez Musharraf will visit Taj Mahal and sit on a desk, on a bench, that bench is then cleaned by cow urine. And when Pakistani cricket team visits India, separate utensils are used because they are malich. This is the reality of the Hindutva Hindu. So therefore, secularism is dead, democracy is dead, it is replaced by Hindu majoritism. There is no human right, only majority rights, even within class society. There are no women rights, and freedom is dented and degraded. What would that mean? That would mean a bloody internal implosion. It could lead to an internal Indian civil war. It could lead to mass refugees making their way out of India. Now, the greatest threat, and from our angle, is to the Muslims of India. You see, when Mr. Modi was asked what's the future for the Muslim majority has in India, Mr. Modi, instead of answering questions about Muslims, talks about the success of Indian Parsis. The question is about Muslims, and his answer is about Parsis, as if 200 million Muslims do not exist. And there's no follow-up question by Financial Times. And they're very clear on that. The Karnataka Deputy Chief Minister says the BJP does not need Indian Muslim votes. Every Indian has to be a Hindu. And all those who are buried today are related to Hindu culture, Hindu ancestors, Hindu land, nothing more than that. And I thought my 3rd great-grandfather was buried in India, my 4th great-grandfather was buried in India, my 5th great-grandfather was buried in India. And according to this Hindutva-driven Chief Minister, anybody who is buried there belongs to Hindu culture and Hindu ancestors. And you see, that gets reflected in the educational discrimination. If the Hindus have 9% graduates, the Muslim graduates are 4%. The Muslim identity, their lingua franca, is under attack. Urdu is being strangulated in India. Urdu. The Apex Urdu Council, called the NCPU, is paralyzed. The tenure of government members, which expired 2 years ago, they have no new member has been appointed, so as to paralyze this Urdu body. Funds have been stolen. In the dress, they have been demonized. If you wear a Muslim cap, it's called the skull cap. If you wear a sherwani, you are called Abba Jan. If you eat beef or carry beef, you are on threat by vigilantes. And last but not the least, if they get caught by you, you get caught by them, you are asked to go back to Pakistan. Chant Jai Shri Ram and then go back to Pakistan. There's no wonder that anti-Muslim posts that are being originated on the web globally, 85% of all anti-Muslim hate posts is being generated by India. And their participation in the Indian, for example, BJP has no Muslim member. I told you they have 303 members. Not one of them is a Muslim. They are using films to demonize Muslims, to rewrite history. Films. I'll give you 5 films. Jihad in the Eye of Storm, Kashmir Files, Kerala Story, 72 Hure, and Animal. Watch any one of them. State patronage targeted anti-Muslim. To top it all, there's a new film that came out. It's called Hanuman, and the makers of Indian film Hanuman donated 2.6 crores to Ayodhya Mandir on its inauguration. There has been a 30% increase in hate crime between 2014 and 17 when Modi came into play. And in Modi's second term, it has increased exponentially, it has doubled. 83,000 mosques in India are now under threat. 83,000 mosques. Babri Mosque is probably the first one of them. And therefore, Barack Obama was very clear that if this continues, what I spoke about, the civil war, the Barack Obama is very clear. He says, the protection of Muslim minority in a Hindu majority India is worth mentioning. If you, that is Bharat, India, don't protect the rights of ethnic minorities in India, Muslims and Christians, there is a strong possibility that India at some point starts pulling apart. Last year, Barack Obama has warned India that India is likely to start pulling apart. And look at the implication of that if that was to happen on that side of the border. Even when Article 370 in Supreme Court gave that article, and somebody asked a Hindu senior advocate who had represented the Muslims, he said some battles are fought to be lost. For history must be recorded, the uncomfortable facts for generations to know. History alone is the final arbitrator. And we all know what is happening in Kashmir, and you saw that only 2 weeks ago, when British High Commissioner in Pakistan, she visited Kashmir, what is the kind of reaction that came from India, which talks about infringement of India's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and terming it as unacceptable. And they have become very vocal, and they have become very arrogant. You see, Lindsey Graham, the US Senator, he was talking to Jai Shankar. He said, when it comes to Kashmir, I don't know how it ends, but let me make sure that 2 democracies will end it differently. And Jai Shankar, as rude as he is, said, don't worry, Senator, 1 democracy will settle it. And you know which one. This is because they think, and Amit Shah thinks, that in Kashmir 2 historical blunders were made. And that's the word they use, historical blunders. And for them, Nehru was the one who made those historical blunders. So therefore, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, let me start coming to the last part of my talk. The fundamental foundation of my argument today has been that there has been a shift in the nature of Indian state, a character of Indian state, and this transition from India to Bharat is not as benign or as inconsequential as it is. It has a larger context internally and regionally. Now let me start with the region. You see, Mr. Jaishankar speaking at the Center for Contemporary Studies on China's foreign policy and international relations in the new era. He speaks about the new era. But more importantly, he speaks about two things: new normal and new responses. New normal posture and new normal responses. So India is now very much into what they want to define as new normal. And Balakot was one of their attempts, which was thwarted, to try and make a new normal. Look at India's neighborhood, Nepal. It's not landlocked, it is India-locked. Even their constitution, their interim constitution of 2007 or their constitution of 2015 was framed under 3 Indian scholars. When this Akhand Bharat map was displayed, the Nepali opposition leader, Mr. Oli, he said, if a country like India that sees itself as an ancient and strong country and as a model of democracy and puts Nepali territory in its map and hangs that map in the parliament, it cannot be called fair. This is how Nepal feels. Bangladesh. You know what they call Bangladeshis in India? Indian leaders, cockroaches. Cockroaches. Churchill would call them rabbits. They'll breed like rabbits. The Indians would call them cockroaches because cockroaches also breed like rabbits. And what's the most famous social media campaign at this moment in Bangladesh? Forget about what's happened in the elections. That's how Indian influence in elections outside their territory takes place. The campaign is #IndiaOut. If you look at the top trend in Bangladesh today, the top trend is #IndiaOut and boycott Indian products. Look at Sikkim. In April 71, India took control of Sikkim and overthrew the monarchy. And in 75, the Indian Parliament, the Sikkim Parliament announced that the king was disposed and declared Sikkim had become part of India through a manipulated referendum. So when Russia carries out a referendum in Crimea, we have a problem. But when India carries out a referendum in Sikkim to just grab it up, there's not a simple whisper. And Sikkim was therefore finally occupied in 75. Bhutan. I'm just looking at the regional impact of this Hindutva. Bhutan, for all practical purposes, is a protected state. But it's not a protectorate of India. Make whatever you want to make of it. India has iron grip over Bhutan's foreign policy, defense policy, and commerce. Recently, Bhutan was willing to work with China for early settlement and some political processes. Wait for a regime change in Bhutan soon. Maldives. You see, they are calling for boycott of Maldives tourism. But Maldives president's statement was very, apt. He has ordered all Indian military personnel to leave by 15th March 24, in 2 months. And he says, we may be small, but that does not give you the license to bully us. So he's calling India a bully, which it is under Hindutva. He says we are independent. Indian Ocean doesn't belong to one country, that is India. And I am not in anyone's backyard. So I'm giving you across the spectrum, along the Indian periphery, the kind of Myanmar. India carried out its first cross-border so-called surgical strike against Myanmar in 2015 by the 21st Para Special Forces. And today they speak about international law and rule of law. Under which rule of law was a surgical strike carried out in another independent country? In Pakistan, I will just say two things because you've known the famous saying by Chuck Hagel, a statement that he made in 2011 in the University of Oklahoma. He says India has been using Afghanistan as a second front against Pakistan. He was at that time, if you know, Chuck Hagel was a nominee of the Secretary of Defense, and I was at that time a senator. And India has over the years financed problems for Pakistan on that side of the border. And you can carry that into many other dimensions. And since I'm privy to many other dimensions, I will not actually explore more on what he meant when he said many other. Who created and crafted the troubles in East Pakistan? Who created Mukti Banis? Who created the training camps inside Mukti Bani, inside India? And when finally the trouble had broken out in March 71, in June, Mrs. Indira Gandhi goes and visits United States. And that is reported by Henry Kissinger, if you read his Leadership 6 Studies in World Strategy. He says that when Indira Gandhi met Nixon, Nixon informed Indira Gandhi in June 71 that Yahya Khan had agreed two things: replace martial law with civilian rule and autonomy in Bangladesh. She was told in June 71. But Nixon says she was only interested in breakup of Pakistan. And we see what likes of Gulbashan Yadav and others continue to do inside Pakistan, and how Pakistan's progress of future in CPAC is being targeted, and how even a small conference like SARC in the political domain cannot be held in Pakistan. An Indian military has the largest build-up in South Asia. It has become a bully. It is carrying out surgical strikes. It claims it carried out one in Myanmar. We've spoken about that. It claims it carried out second in Pakistan in 2016. It was phantom. There was no surgical strike, but it did carry out a limited military action again in 2019 in Balakot. And India has the fastest growing nuclear program, not only in South Asia, but in the world. And India wants very much to become a net security provider in South Asia. But the West would like to, or some in the world would like to downplay. For example, the former Japanese deputy NSA, he says, India will be a difficult superpower like a big France. May I humbly disagree with him. India will not be a big superpower like France. It will be a big superpower like France, like big Germany, and like big Russia put together. Put together. Or it will be a super China or China 2.0 as the West looks at China. Now, after sponsoring terrorism inside Pakistan, Gulbashan Yadav, you have seen their actions in Qatar, espionage, in Canada, killing of Sikhs, in UK, again, killing of Sikhs, even in United States, plans of killing of Sikhs. So this RSS now I come to the final part of this global reach. You see, once they are done with their internal things in the near term, and then they go onto their region, as I said, in the midterm, they have global and grandized plan. I'll give you the example. RSS is present in 156 countries of this world. 160. It is present in UK, it is present in USA, it is present in Canada, it is present in France, it is present in Germany. 156 countries of the world, RSS is present. And look at the philosophy of RSS. It will operate beneath the surface for 58 years or 70 years. So what they are doing, they are acquiring political space in Europe, in America. They have done so for the last 25 years, and you can start seeing the basic result. I don't want to name those leaders today in the West, in UK, in US, who have Indian origins. So they are occupying the political space inside the West. Fast forward another 25 years, and I said long-term, 2050, the threat will come. See what political space and political power they would have acquired. They are also acquiring financial space and economic space inside those countries. And fast forward another 25 years and see how much of financial space or economic space they would have gained. Can India gain such financial and political space in China? Can India gain such financial and political space in Russia? So who is under threat? Whose political space is being gained? Whose financial space is being gained? So this double game, that you become a member of Quad and Quad Plus and Eastern Quad, and yet you become a member of SCO and BRICS, this double game cannot last for long. And India's economic miracle, let me give you an example. Russian oil is embargoed. What does India do? Buys Russian oil. What does it do? It purifies that oil and sells it to whom? Europe, as if it has been purified. And Europe knows it, that the West would say you cannot buy Russian weapons. India can buy S-400. So the only country that can transfer the data as to how the Russian equipment can track a modern European jet aircraft like Rafale and F-16 is India, that can pass that information to Russia. Because the S-400 is there, the Russian teams, they come frequently for their repair and their maintenance. So on the international arena, they have occupied internal political space, and their economic giants are there. Amazingly, when a Russian economic giant is there, he's called a Russian oligarch. I've yet to see an Indian being called an Indian oligarch. If China is there, Huawei is there, Huawei is to be rooted out because it's a national security threat. Well, what about 2050, when India will become the greater security threat and would have ingressed every single part of these polities? So in conclusion, and as I was writing, I asked myself the question, what next? And the answer came to me in Mr. Modi's speech in Ayodhya. He said, Ram Mandir is built. 500 years of wait is over. Ram Mandir is built. And then he himself asks, what next? I'm not asking that question. Mr. Modi himself asked. So that's not the end. That's the beginning. Modi is saying, what next? And he then says, I have a feeling that the Kal Chakra is changing. The Kal Chakra is changing. This is Mr. Modi. And Mr. Modi says, this is the right time. We have to now lay, now imagine this is exactly what he says. We have to now lay the foundation of Bharat. And Bharat obviously will lead to Akhand Bharat. So forget about India. The foundation was laid in 1947. Modi standing in 2024 says, we now have to lay the foundation of not new India, but Bharat. He says, now we have to lay the new foundation of Bharat. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what Hitler had said in 1933 when he proclaimed the Third Reich, and he talked about laying the Third Reich for 1,000 years. Precisely the same words. Now, because of all this, the mantra would be that Pakistan does not want peace. But for that, in the conclusion, let me quote Mr. Praveen Sohave, who says that when Indian says that Pakistan does not want peace, this is incorrect. This is Praveen Sohane. We don't want, mean India, we don't want peace with them. When I hear Dr. Jaishankar, he makes it sound Pakistanis are centipedes, not worthy of consideration. Truth is, in strategic terms, they are geopolitical pivots in the new global order. So therefore, India, and now Bharat, is a revisionist power. It is an expanding power in all domains with no upper limit. It is a militaristic power. It is a fascist power, and it is a dangerous power. What Bharat is becoming is a big power, like a big France, big Germany, big Russia put together, and unfortunately not a great power. And last, therefore, it is not out of coincidence that India's prime national security conference dialogue, the Raisana dialogue, this year in 2024. What is the theme for Raisana 24? It's Chaturanga. That's the theme. Now, Chaturanga is the ancient Indian strategical game like the chess. That's the theme that they have kept for Raisana 24. And what that Chaturanga, what Chaturanga does is, it repurposes 4 human limbs with 4 types of weaponry: elephants, chariots, cavalry, and infantry. This is exactly what Chaturanga is. So the logical question is, who is India's Chaturanga focused on and targeted at? And I think Musharraf Zaidi in yesterday's article tried to explain that those in charge of continuing India's exceptional, confuse and confound information operations will yell loudly in the direction of the Western capitals and say, China, China, China. Chaturanga is for China. But ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by saying, we have to realistically ask, who are the Kutelias in India stretching their Chaturanga muscle for? In the short term, internal Muslims and Christians. In the mid-term, Pakistan. And in the long term, West. I rest my argument. Thank you very much for a patient hearing.
Thank you so much, sir. We would now open the floor for question and answer sessions. And I would request the audience to please keep their questions brief so that we can take maximum number of questions. Sure, sir. Abdullah, please, mic.
Is on? Can you hear me? General Saab, as expected, succinct, tremendous analysis, and very convincing. But you said a few words here which I'd like to bring to forth, and it raises 2 questions in my mind. You talked about the 4 pillars, and the 4th one was conquest and Shuddhi. You talked about
Conquest of Afghanistan and Pakistan and frontiers?
Yes.
And then Shuddhi, their conversion.
Right, exactly. And then you talked about the short-term compulsion of the West in accepting India's, I would say, misdeeds. Now, the question becomes, is the Indian focus and the speed at which they have gone, and I'm not talking about the 58 years in the making, but the speed at which they are implementing their foundation, if you like, could this be too fast? Because a short-term compulsion of the West, which is grounded in rightist philosophies, could very well change. And when that changes, as long as it's a short-term compulsion, would the Indians have gone too far and would they have to backtrack? So is there some hope? The second part of it, which again from your words, that it's a expansionist, land-oriented expansion, right? And therefore Pakistan becomes a primary target, as you implied. They have stated openly, Azad Kashmir, Gilgit and Baltistan. Hamara hai, bilkul. And the maps are in fact, you cannot even legally make a map in India which shows them on the other side. So, number one question was, have they gone too fast and too far? And will they be backtracking? Or is there any chance of that? And number two, for us in the short term, we do face several dangers. Are we prepared for that? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As always, a very good question. You see, I have hope. I have hope because in the only context that I brought out was Hitler claiming a third Reich. And he went too far and too fast. So whenever you are going too far and too fast, there is a natural scope for blunders, not errors, blunders. So we'll have to see whether those blunders will come faster or those who are pushing the China, anti-China narrative and containment China narrative, that will be a faster domain. I think in either case, we have to first of all put ourselves in order. And I think that's the key to this question. Ji, Nakvi Sahab. Acha, sir. Acha, sir, sorry, I didn't see you up. Sir, let's give him. Ambassador Sahab, bataiye.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, I will just relate one occasion where we can explain what is the relationship between Pakistan and India. We had our bilateral political consultation, and our former Foreign Secretary Riaz Mohammad Khan was present, very learned Foreign Secretary, and Bangladesh Foreign Secretary, after explaining all the details which you explained in your discussion, Bangladesh Foreign Secretary, I recall his name very well, Himayatuddin and Mr. Himayat, he just gave a very small answer. He said Riaz, and he explained to me probably in Urdu because he used to speak very good Urdu, Bangladeshi Foreign Secretary. Riaz, you said all the things is absolutely very correct. We had also the same problem with India. The difference between you and Bangladesh is that we accepted India as a big brother, but you did not. This is the difference. Sir, my question is, you explained very well all the things related to Hindutva. You explain all the things very well related to Hindutva, but from the prism of the people who are in Europe or the people or the Arab countries, especially GCC countries, they always see the economic prosperity and greatness and economic advantages of India. So despite this, they are Muslims, but yet they are not very much paying much attention towards whatever you said, and which we believe that human rights violation and Muslims persecution, different other threat. The other thing is that how do you see that is the role of Congress? The difference between North India and South India, we have seen that all these Hindutva ideology mostly very popular in North India, not as compared to southern part of India. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have a different take. You know what's the Modi's population rating in the globe, inside India? 83%. So if South was not with him, just look at where the BJP stands today. You know, you gave an example of a Bangladeshi foreign secretary. Let me give you a counter example of a Bangladeshi officer that I met. And I don't want to put him in trouble because he was at one of the highest, if not the highest position. So I don't want to name him, don't want to put him in trouble. We met somewhere outside during a conference, and he took me towards one side, a Bangladeshi general. He said, General Hayat, please keep standing. He said, if there is no Pakistan, there is no Bangladesh. He came with that. You see, I concluded by a saying from Parveen Swane, who said that India would claim that Pakistan does not want peace. And then he goes on to say that it is from their side that it is coming. The same country for 40 years was doing better than India economically. Same country. India was at that time the same country on the other side. In fact, the Indian growth rate would be called the Hindu growth rate because it was hovering around 2 to 3%. And Pakistan at that time was hovering around 6 to 10% growth rate. So there is nothing fundamentally wrong on that account. Look at Pakistan's choices. Pakistan made a choice for CPAC, an economic choice, would be a game changer. Who is thwarting and attacking CPAC? India. India has a special cell under Ajit Doval targeting. Their initial allocation for that anti-CPAC cell was $500 million US. Initial. I don't know how much they have given it since. They have carried out 77 attacks against CPAC. India doesn't want CPAC or Pakistan's prosperity. If it does, why would it attack CPAC? Which is basically taking economic goods from them one side. There's not a single military piece of an equipment which is going from here and there. So therefore, the ideological construct, when you have an ideological construct like the Hindutva, then if somebody would think that there could be an appeasement on one account and the other and that things will be all have, he says, now is the time to lay the foundation stone for Bharat. Indian Prime Minister is claiming, now is the time to lay down the foundation stone for Bharat. And the map in the Indian Parliament says it is Akhand Bharat. So, basically speaking, you see, economic growth, for example, is not geographically connected now. Most of it is now E-based. You don't have to be neighbors to do economic. India's economic IT growth, for example, today they are earning more than $200 billion US from IT. It doesn't come from neighbors like Nepal or Bhutan or Maldives. It comes from Japan and from foreign lands. So, yes, Pakistan needs an intelligent, progressive, modern engagements. But it doesn't have to compromise on its core principles because of, somebody wanting it to appease. And for those who are appeasing lover, I always say, if you think it will end there, every time they have closed a chapter, it's for them a start of a new chapter. You have heard them, their chapter will not close till that Shuddhi will come into place, till that conquest has come into place. Ji.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's indeed always a pleasure to listen to you. But this time, you have perhaps made an excellent presentation of a very comprehensive character and nature of India's Bharat identity that it is developing, and that is. I recall reading somewhere that when the Indian Constitution was being written, Nehru, most
of the people, except Ambedkar, were in favor of calling the name of the state as Bharat. But Nehru said, and he was very clever, that let us put Bharat as desired by everybody, but in bracket, let us put India. And that benefit that they have had from the name India, they are now going to forego it, but that's how their choice is. And I think, Jan Sahab, you have analyzed the entire Bharat phenomena in a very lucid and comprehensive manner, which is, I think, of great benefit to all the younger colleagues and friends here. My one point that came to my mind, I'll just mention it, it's not necessarily a question, that besides the military build-up, the land-based forces that India has now developed, there is this denuclearization of the ocean. Because India has introduced in the Indian Ocean nuclear-armed and nuclear-powered submarines. And they are aiming at the Indian Ocean more than the South China and the East China Sea. It is on this side, on the western side, that they are wanting to establish their dominance. So this was just a thought that came to me, sir. Thank you.
Sir, before you answer, the related question. The Indians have started toying with the ideas of theater commands, so which is more like tri-service command, and they are emulating United States combatant commands with a global, outlook. So do you think it ties up with this expansionist agenda of Hindutva?
Thank you, Rashid Wali, and thank you, Sarwar Saab. I think you've beautifully encompassed it. I think the political philosophy behind this reorganization is very much Hindutva driven. It is that worldview which wants to, in an expansionist mode, use military force for political purposes. So I very much second that. With regard to India and its behavior in the nuclear realm, I think India has been the least responsible nuclear power in the world. And there are examples upon examples which will actually solidify that fact. And every time in South Asia, if there has been a destabilizing nuclear act committed, it has been initiated by India. India introduced nuclear weapons in South Asia, Pakistan didn't. India was the first one to explode nuclear weapons in South Asia. Pakistan just never responded to the first explosion. India was the first to again, explode nuclear weapons in 1998, which Pakistan had to then respond and restore the strategic equilibrium. India, as you said yourself, has carried out these deterrence patrols and has weaponized the sea. So I think the focus has to be on Indian behavior as to how it is behaving with these weapons. And to me, the most dangerous thing is, world has been talking about nuclear weapons falling in the hands of extremists. And there's a lot of literature available on that. In dark scenarios, may I put a proposition that nuclear weapons have already fallen into the hands of RSS extremists on this end, sir. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. You have very comprehensively brought out the threat part of it. But myself, as a Pakistani, I would be more worried, and I would like to ask your opinion. Are these threats really understood by the people in the helm of the affairs, the policymakers, one? And secondly, if they are understood, what are they really reflected in our policies? Are we really aware of this threat? One, this is a part of, say, awareness campaign, we can understand. But after understanding this threat by the policymakers, is it really reflected in our policy, and what preparations? Do you think, as a Pakistani, we are prepared to take on this threat? Sir.
You see, The threat is, I have identified the threat in categoric terms, not as a Pakistani. If you look at my lecture theme today, it was Emergence of Bharat, Implication. I could have said Emergence of Bharat, Implications and Response. I deliberately did not touch that part of the subject because I think the first thing that is required for that response to generate is a national awareness of the threat that exists and not be carried away by, in the domains that I have worked, there is a serious debate and discussion on the threat and the response. And I can tell you in many fields, the response is beyond and is capable of confronting that threat. In the strategic domain, even in the military domain. I think what we require is basically a political response, a narrative response, an economic response. And that is something that we need to work upon.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मेरा नाम जवेरिया है और मैं IPRI में एज अ पॉलिसी एडवोकेसी काम कर रही हूँ. थैंक यू सो मच सर फॉर योर वेरी इन डेप्थ लेक्चर एंड यू आइडेंटिफाइड राइटली दैट इंडिया हैज़ इन्वोक्ड इट्स सिविलाइजेशन स्टेट स्टेटस थ्रू भारत. In this time, Russia, Iran and China are also invoking similar concepts, be it the Russian kingdom, the Tang dynasty for China, or the Persian empire invoked by Iran. So, sir, during this time, how do you see or how can Pakistan in this era reinvigorate its own national character in the region? Because if you have to put up a fight with such civilizational state concepts, how do you suggest Pakistan put up its front in the region? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think you bring out good analogies. But there is a difference between this RSS Hindutva-driven civilizational concept and the other civilizational concepts. They are expansionist in nature, but they have a cap to their expansion. Secondly, they are revisionist in certain frameworks of time. This is beyond time revision that India is actually trying to attempt. And thirdly, those expansion dreams are not exclusionary. Hindutva expansion dream is very categorically exclusionary to other race and other religion. That's the difference.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any more questions?
I think we are done with questions.
It was very comprehensive, yes.
No, thank you very much. I just want to say last few words. You see, I'm also a student, learning as much from you all and others and in my reading. And I think whatever we need to put across has to be based on solid research and intellectual argument. Because this subject you will not get generated from any other capital in the world. If you think this will get generated from any other capital of the world, this can only get generated in Islamabad or Lahore or Karachi or Quetta inside Pakistan. And therefore it is incumbent upon us to be very realistic, have no biases, but be very categoric and be able to give out this narrative in the form that others will understand. Probably they will not understand in the near term because the threat to them is not near term. They will not even probably understand it in the midterm. But the Titanic is coming. And the Titanic will not only sink itself, it will sink them also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would now request President.
Very scary, very scary.
I would now request President IPRI to please deliver his concluding remarks.
Sir, I have nothing to say but deep appreciations for the kind of hard work which has gone in for preparation of this talk. It was about 2 hours expose, and all filled with empiricism and empirical evidence, and nothing is based on the sentiments or जज्बाती चीज़ नहीं है, कोई हवा में चीज़ नहीं है. Everything is very, very solid. I have a proposal to make on this, sir. Two proposals. Number one is this, that you keep talking at various forums, and every talk of yours is like this. It is based on research, knowledge, and is empirical. So I would request you to consider compiling a book of your talks. I can offer you what we can do is, as IPRI we can assist you, or you have so many other resources as well. And secondly, about this today's talk, if you agree, sir, we should develop it, or we can help you develop it into a research article, and we can publish it in our journal, which is of international acclaim. And it is going to be a very, very useful article, and very useful material is there. It is like, मैं ये तो नहीं कहूँगा मिनी PhD लगता है ये जो आपका आज का thesis था. It is like a mini PhD, mashallah. अच्छा. Secondly, sir, I just wanted to compliment what you said about the South. Someone said, I met someone from South, I met someone from a very higher place in the hierarchy. There are people who have difference of opinion on what Modi is doing there, and there are people who say about the South, there are people who say about the abrogation of, in a way, constitution and violation of the constitutional spirit of secularism, which was actually put there by the founders of India. But no one is prepared to say it, and as you said, Modi's popularity is growing by every day, which is a dangerous trend, and it is a dangerous trend not for us only, for the whole world, as you flagged it. And why the world is not privy to this or doesn't want to listen to this is because their thinking is kind of only focused on short-term goals, as you said, in containing China, and for them, India remains the most appropriate and most well-qualified regional bulwark. With these few words, sir, once again, we are very grateful to you, and it's a great knowledge you gave us, new knowledge, I would say, you gave us, and very, very important speech and question answer.
Thank you very much.
Very grateful, sir. And we would request you to keep honoring us again and again. Thank you.
I would now request President IPRI to please present the memento to our worthy guest.
No, it is because it is going to be